it isn't your typical list. Like in a way, two things. It had to feel of the destination only. It could only be in the destination. Like a lot of hotels now feel very cookie cutter, or they could be anywhere. Even some of the bigger luxury hotel brands like feel like they could all be in Tokyo or something, right? But I wanted a place that literally could only be in Tokyo. The second thing was I wanted each hotel, and this isn't true for all of them, and there's actually about 130 in the book, 140 because I did bonus days. But anyways, I wanted all of them to let outsiders in to experience it. So even if you can't afford to sleep at the hotel, take it on a date.
That is Annie Fitzsimmons. She's today's guest, here to share her personal top 5 hotels in the world worth seeking out, curated from her awesome new book published by National Geographic, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the world's ultimate retreats. Annie has covered hotels, travel, lifestyle, restaurants, and destinations around the world for the last 2 decades plus for some of the biggest travel media companies in the world. And in this episode, you are going to hear not only her curated list from the book, you're going to get a sense of what these properties have to offer in terms of history, culture, the destination that surrounds it. And not only are we going to highlight the hotels that are destination worthy, but also some of the experiences you can have even if you're not a guest at the hotel, which can apply, of course, to any travelers. You don't necessarily have to be staying at these hotels to experience some of the things they have to offer. That's a whole other part of this conversation, of course, along the way. She shares plenty of travel advice, her number one hotel-related birthday tip, why she only takes public transportation everywhere she goes. We talk about matching your accommodations with your personality, some of the best ways to develop that criteria for yourself. What makes a hotel, quote-unquote, destination worthy? We get into that, hotel trends and where the hospitality industry is going in the near future, her advice for working in the travel industry, her top 3 destination recommendations, and so much more, all packed into this episode right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for hanging out and letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. Nothing gets me more excited than to bring a seasoned travel veteran like Annie Fitzsimmons on the show, who has dedicated countless hours to not only traveling and staying in hotels around the world, but then creating an entire book, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the world's ultimate retreats, published by National Geographic. I mean, a lot of thought behind this. So, of course, when I asked her to put together this list of her top 5 hotels in the world worth seeking out, I was so curious to hear what she would come up with, and it doesn't disappoint. So, hope you enjoy this one. We're going to dive in 1 second. Don't forget Annie's website if you want to find her work and the book and all that good stuff, AnnieFitzsimmons.com. We'll link up to that in the show notes. Stay tuned on the back end because we have part 3 of our top 5 road trips in the USA series, publishing today. You'll never guess where we're going. Well, maybe you will. We've been north, we've been south. Now we're headed on an epic East Coast road trip. You're going to love this one. Don't forget, we have a free newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. And also stick around on the back, and I'll leave you with a quote. Annie shares an idea right at the end of this chat that I found really inspiring, and the quote will build on that to send you off on your day with a very positive mindset, let's say. So thank you so much for listening, for being a part of this community. Please enjoy my conversation with Annie, and I'll see you on the tail end. Cheers.
This station is Westminster. Change here for Circle and District line. Exit for Westminster Abbey and Houses of Parliament.
Annie Fitzsimmons, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Nice to see you.
So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Got the book, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the world's ultimate retreats. What a tough assignment, Annie. I feel for you.
I know. Someone had to do it.
Well, what is the toughest assignment that you've had, actually? I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years, 20 plus years.
20 plus years. Yes, I'm getting old. I haven't had a lot of tough assignments. I will say that I really don't like Pisa, Italy. So anytime that I've had to go to Pisa, which has been like 4 times for stories, I've
Really?
just hated it. Yeah. And also when you're sick, and I've been sick in Myanmar and Berlin, and you just get, food poisoning or something like that. You just want to be home. So that's tough.
Yeah, it is. That's funny. I haven't heard the Pisa thing yet. I of course, immediately think of all the tourists standing with the hand doing the picture thing. And I was one of them. It was one of those like, oh, you could get out really quick and do it and hop back on the train to your next place, which was kind of funny. How does an Arizona native end up in London? That was the first question.
So we moved here. My Swiss husband and I moved to London almost 6 years ago, and he was running. We actually met. We met at Virtuoso Travel Week in Las Vegas 10 years ago. And he was running the Swiss National Tourist Board for the Americas. And so he got offered when we had our daughter. She was 9 months old in New York, where, to be totally honest with you, I thought I would leave in a coffin. Like, I never thought I would leave. I thought I love New York. It was like part of me. But then he got offered this job in London. And because I can work from anywhere, I was like, this is a great thing. And, you have 2 kids, like raising your kids in New York starts to feel a little aggressive. So being here in London was like perfect. And I just got ILR, which is my permanent visa. And so I'm waiting for my passport, which I can get in a year.
I love the choice of words there. Aggressive.
Yeah. Aggressive.
I grew up on the East Coast, so I know what you mean. That translates well. Well, as somebody who's had a similar, raising kids overseas, it's not easy to leave your home country and live abroad all the time.
It's not. Although I would be curious what you miss too. I always say I miss 2 things, like besides my family and friends. I miss iced coffee, like real iced coffee. And the sense that anything is possible. Like, I feel like that is uniquely American, that we just believe we can do anything. And I don't think that exists really in Europe. I mean, it's like sweeping generalization, but sure. I don't know. What do you think? It's
funny that you said the first thing you said was a food item, because it's almost always to a T, 100% a food item for people.
Yes, exactly.
There's this, I don't know if they have it in London now, but there's this company that launched here, and they seem to be putting out these American themed things, like food items. So they have like I literally just made my kids a box of mac and cheese for lunch. They have like canned pumpkin. I don't have to carry it back in my suitcase and plan like 10 months ahead for Thanksgiving. They have these things. So, it's slowly happening with the food thing. I mean, I guess I miss some of the processed foods sometimes, like the Cheez-Its and things like that.
I know. But my sister lives in London too. We always say we go home. I was home in Arizona for Christmas. We come back just like a little puffy. Like there's just a puffy layer.
Part of the American
going home
experience. When you go back, you got to like stuff your face with all the foods you miss. Mexican food is the number one thing, like good Mexican restaurant. But in terms of attitude and culture, I think I don't know. I was just talking to my wife about this. Maybe it's just a circumstance of the day and age and society we live in. But I mean, you guys have this in England. You have the pub culture where it seems like people are willing to or they want to go out and connect with other people, whether it be like strangers or friends, and kind of do that. And I feel like that's kind of lacking here. Like, it gets cold in Norway in the winter, and then everybody's sort of just huddled up in their homes, and they make it cozy with candles and all that stuff. But man, Annie, I just want
You don't have friends over? Like, there's not like a culture of like Friday night candles with friends?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have friends over for dinner and stuff, but I mean, it's not like, I don't know, my wife's going to Ireland pretty soon, and it just brought me back there, and how it is where I feel like, you go out and you can always find some music, there's people dancing. It's almost like any night of the week. I don't know. That's important for mental health, I feel.
You're right. And the great thing about a pub that I love is that a pub is for a baby until you're 100. Like, it's not for like 30-year-old, people after work, or the 20-year-old study abroad crowd. It's literally for everyone. And you're right. It is that sense of like coming together and sort of getting through the long, gray, dark winter together.
Yeah. But the British, they have a unique sense of humor in a way.
They do. And I feel like I'm always 15 seconds behind. Like they'll say something and I'm like, okay, that was funny, but I've just got it. Like it's not a foreign language, but it is. Yeah.
Well, you guys have an interesting thing because neither of you are from there. That's the thing. You're both from another country living in a third party country. So you're raising a third culture child, I guess. That's what they call that, right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
She has a British accent. It's hard. I think we talk about how this is maybe the only place where we could be happy as a family together now because London is so global and I don't want to live in Switzerland right now and I don't want to move back to the US. And my husband is very easy. Like he's annoyingly content. So like anything is fine for him, any place, he's just happy. He's a happy person. And I am too, but I feel like I have more of a sense of like, what do I want to do next? Or what's my future? And London just feels like for us, like you were saying, that third culture kid, like she's British, she's been here since she was 9 months. She's 6 years old, going to the British schools, which I still don't understand. I feel really lucky. And I don't think I'll ever get over, like we're going to Paris next week, that there's no jet lag or that we hopped on the train and those things that very well, like they're just so special. I'll never get over that. As soon as I think that's normal, I probably will move away. It's really special.
Yeah. So. I found too that I don't know how it is for you as a parent, but with my kids in the Norwegian school, I don't have the life experience to kind of put that into context and what that actually means. Of course it changes, when I went to school decades ago and how school is now in America is not the same thing, but you have like a reference point for it in some ways. Here, I don't. I mean, it's still school, but there's differences. So it's really interesting because I feel like in some ways, I've talked about this on the show before, I'm a bit able to live like another second childhood, like a Norwegian childhood.
Yes, I love that.
In a way?
I relate. Yes. Me too. I had this little mini British childhood. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you framed it.
Well, what are some of the things about your mini British childhood that are surprising to you or like shocking or weird or?
Yeah. I mean, sports day for one, those famous pictures of Princess Diana, like where she's running and racing, and sports day is such a British cultural thing. It's like everyone's competing to win. But it becomes this, parents are there hanging out with snacks and drinks, and it's not like field day. Is that what we called it in the US? I don't even remember. It's a very unique cultural thing, or the fact that we're 3 terms, just the way the school year is set up. She gets out mid-July. At that point in the US, I had been out for 6-7 weeks. So we have this sense of the year being different, which I love. The half-term holidays, which is like the spring breaks. So we're going skiing in Switzerland for half-term, which every time I say it, I sound like a little Gwyneth Paltrow, like I've co-opted the British language. I say things like jumper and lost property instead of lost and found, and trainers. And I go back to the US and people think I have a little bit of an accent, and I really don't hear it. But maybe I do. Maybe it's a tone thing or just the way I talk. But I think it's really... it's funny. I never say the word unique when I write because I think nothing in the world is actually unique except for like irises and snowflakes. But it is a unique way of raising a child and also experiencing the culture through those eyes. And I have the best British school mom friends, like, on the school run. They're so cool. They don't, they're not in my travel world at all, which is like my other real life. I feel like I have 2 lives sometimes. But yeah, I think a lot of them do have castles in the countryside, but it's just what it is.
Yeah. So. It's just interesting to hear your experience because it's multi-layered if you think about it, because you have the experience of being somebody who's not from the country. Anybody who's abroad or traveled abroad can relate to this. It's like you're taking in the culture through your like existing cultural values and through where you came from. But then you have another layer as somebody who works professionally in travel as a writer, who's also taking like a meta view of culture and like, things to do and how do people react in situation. It's like Inception. It just keeps, I love it. It keeps going.
You're very astute. I almost feel like this is a therapy session in some ways because I feel like I've never thought of it that way. That way either. Let me get my tissues. Yeah, that is. I mean, I have traveled the world for work for a long time. And I do feel like, one, I feel like I never was meant to live like one life. So this lets me live many different lives for a day or a week everywhere I go. And then, yeah, coming home and sort of transitioning back into home life can be really hard. Last year, I traveled almost nonstop. It was way too much, actually. My daughter broke down when I was about to go to this conference in Cabo that I had to go to, and she had never broken down before, but it was the first time. She was like, "You can't leave." But I ended up having the best week ever, right? So it's like, I think guilt is a useless emotion in most ways. And obviously I want to be there for her. And when I'm here, with her. But yeah, it is a sense of also giving her that. Like, she's told everyone. My mom wrote a hotel book, like she presented it to her class. Like, that is really cool. And giving her that sense of curiosity and empathy that you get when you travel. I mean, there's no other way that I have found that gives it to you in the way that travel does. And it also takes you out of your comfort zone, makes you uncomfortable in so many ways, even if you are staying in the best hotels in the world. So yeah, I there are many layers.
Yeah,
I guess
that's pretty badass. Like some kids bringing in their stuffed
Yeah.
animal, and you're like, "Here's the book my mom wrote for National Geographic."
I know. I know.
Like, woo.
I know. And then, some of the teachers at school are like, "Oh, I wanted to work for National Geographic," and you're like, "I know. I wish I could take you with me." So
it's an interesting observation what you said about. What did you say? I don't want to paraphrase about guilt not being like a useless emotion. Is that
yeah?
sort of the gist
it
of
is a useless emotion, I think.
Yeah. Can you expand on that? Because I think this is actually, I think, pretty important for people listening, because part of travel, I think, if you're listening to this show, there can be a strong element that it's exploration, it's adventure, and all those things, it's curiosity, but it's also an element of self-care, right? Like, I feel like for some people on a visceral level, if you want to travel, if you're listening to this show, you're probably one of these people. You're just like, I actually need to travel. Like, I need to do this for myself. And then when you get into parenting, or if you're not a parent right now, it doesn't matter. Like, the idea of, taking time for yourself, whether it's career driven or just like a trip, and doing it in a guilt-free way from a mindset perspective. Is that something that you've ever struggled with? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I think I've come to the conclusion that I am who I am. And I always kind of wished for a life that was quote unquote normal, meaning I moved around a lot as a kid. Like, my husband has a son from another marriage. Like, I was married before. So instead I have this, that's only the personal side, obviously not the professional, but I've sort of have this big life, right? I've sort of said yes to all of these things. And the guilt piece of it I've reframed it in my mind as, I want to show my daughter a life worth living. Like, why am I sending her to school? Why am I doing homework with her every weekend? Like, to hopefully show her that she can create a life that she loves. I never ever say I hate my job, ever. I always say I love it, or I did this really cool thing at work today, or I interviewed this really cool person. It does take work in the sense that I feel like I hadn't seen my husband in the past year. So we are going to Paris to sort of try to see each other again in a way, but he's also super supportive. He knows that I am not who I am if I'm not traveling. And also, I worked so hard to get to this point. Like, my whole, I always think, never think it's out of your league, make it your league. Like, I worked my butt off to really get into this league, so to say, of creating this job with not only the book, but my other projects that doesn't exist anywhere else. Like, it would have been easier if I had been a lawyer or a doctor, because you have the path, the one path forward. But especially now with AI and portfolio careers and all of these things, I'm like, I feel like I was ahead of the curve, sort of creating a portfolio career that also allows me to be a mom. And being a mom is really, really important to me, but it's not the only part of me or who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the element of, what's one of the best things you can do for your child, or if you want to be leading by example, it's just by doing, right? Like, showing, by traveling and doing the work that you do, you're kind of showing hey, you're living a great life that's fulfilling to you. And
Yeah.
They see that. They pick up
They
on
see
it.
that. At a certain point, we can dream and dream and dream of what we want to do. But if you don't have lived experiences, like it doesn't matter. And I think step one for most people is always the hardest step. Like you have this dream and there's all these different steps you could take, but literally take one step towards what you want. And that's sort of how I think about it. And even now after the book, like, do I want to do another book? Can I do another book? What does that look like? But that's all these steps before that's decided.
Well, congratulations on the book.
Yeah.
I asked you if you could put together a little list, almost like a best of the book. Were you able to curate 5 hotels for us from the book?
I did, but I'm gonna cheat a little bit, but yes.
That's okay. We like cheating here. These lists are subjective and they're supposed to be fun.
They are.
I mean, before we dive in, just to get some context for the conversation, because I feel like there are this, again, we talked about generalizing. This is generalizing too much. But when it comes to, you're a luxury travel expert. You've been working in the travel industry for 20 years, but I'm sure you've traveled in all different ways. And just from like a luxury travel perspective, I mean, who doesn't love a little luxury now and again, right? But I feel like there are pros and cons for this, right? In luxury travel, if that's all you do, or you do it in a certain way, it can like you could argue that, the amount you spend, I guess this is generalizing, but the amount you spend is directly proportional to your ability to connect with a place and its people in some ways. Like if you don't have money, you have to take public transportation. You have to stay in the crappy neighborhood because that's all you can afford, and then you're like kind of having a different experience. If you do have a lot of money, you can still have those experiences, but you can also choose to exist in like this bubble where the concierge does this and they take you here and then all the amenities are right there and you don't even have to leave the hotel. And, what kind of version of the place did you get? This isn't picking on you or the book or anything, or luxury travel for that matter. I totally hear you. I mean, I love a good, hotel with a balcony on the beach, I mean, it's a great experience. And it has its time and place. But I mean, like you said, all these things come with different travel experiences. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to that.
So I think sometimes, I, first of all, will only take public transportation. So even if I have a car service, I like getting on the tube, the subway, the metro, whatever it is, because I really do think you see a place like you don't before. And actually, there are a lot of people that I work with who do refuse to do that. They sort of live in these bubbles. So there is that sense of, I do love a luxury hotel, but I need to get into the city. I need to feel it like viscerally, or else I don't feel like I've seen it. I do think there are a couple of things about the book that it isn't your typical list, like in a way, like two things. It had to feel of the destination only. It could only be in the destination. Like a lot of hotels now feel very cookie cutter, or they could be anywhere. Even some of the bigger luxury hotel brands like feel like they could all be in Tokyo or something, right? But I wanted a place that literally could only be in Tokyo. The second thing was I wanted each hotel, and this isn't true for all of them, and there's actually about 130 in the book, 140 because I did bonus days. But anyways, I wanted all of them to let outsiders in to experience it. So even if you can't afford to sleep at the hotel, take it on a date. And in that sense, a great hotel like the Belmont Hotel Cipriani in Venice, which is expensive, and it's 7 minutes from the main part of Venice on a little water taxi. You can go there and go to the bar and have dinner, and you get to experience this place that actually is part of Venice, right? It's not just a place where people go to sleep in these amazing sheets, which they are amazing sheets, but it's part of the Venice landscape. Like there is no Venice without the Cipriani in a way to me, because it's been there so long. So that's how I thought about it. And then I also did write about places that are not obscenely expensive. So there's a hotel in the book in Sicily called the Hotel Gutkowski in Ortigia, where I stayed on a food tour that I did for a birthday. And it's like 200 euros a night. And it's family run, and it's the best food I've ever had. And yeah, you could go stay at the Four Seasons in Taormina, where The White Lotus was filmed. It's an amazing hotel. But I just loved this hotel so much, and I would rather spend a week there, 7 nights, which I did, than the one in Taormina. So I think it is, I say I have my travel writer life and editor life and then my real life, but they do mix a lot of the time. It's easy to recommend a Four Seasons. It's easy to recommend a Belmont. Like they are extraordinary. And also I've done a lot of work showcasing how luxury travel, it's a billions dollar industry, but most of that money, like it goes to to small businesses and to family run businesses, like 90% of it is family run. And so it does sort of trickle down. And even a lot of these, sustainability initiatives, like it starts at the top in luxury travel and then trickles down too. So there is a lot of good coming from what's happening. And we can talk about Africa, which I will talk about, but it's really obvious, like how the money that you're spending goes back into the community.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I love that phrase. Would you say if you can't sleep there, you can date it?
You can't sleep with it, take it on a date.
You can't sleep with it, you can take it on a date. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because, literally sleep in it or with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and the idea that, you could stay at a hostel, but then you can go over here and go to the luxury hotel bar and kind of have a unique experience. That is always a fun thing to do. Like, it doesn't mean you have to be staying there, like you said.
You don't. I would say, like, don't show up like looking like a total, like you just didn't shower for a week. Like, you have to, like, I love dressing for the part. Like, they're not going to look at you, whatever you're wearing, but like, just, go in, dress up a bit, enjoy the theater and hospitality of an amazing hotel. Like, there's nothing like it. And my number one birthday tip, when's your birthday, Jason?
In December.
Oh, you just had it. Okay. Is to find the nicest hotel near you and go for a birthday breakfast. Because even if the rest of the day is horrible, people forget your birthday. You started it out at a fancy hotel. So I like to go to Claridge's in London on my birthday.
Oh, the hotel breakfast. Just like sleepily or not so sleepily wandering down to the lobby to have breakfast.
Exactly.
Is
a long, lingering.
One of life's greatest pleasures. Scandinavia, they know how to do their hotel breakfasts. Their hotel breakfasts are crazy. All right. Before we get into this list, I do want to just get some general hotel advice. So for somebody that's looking to match the overall experience they want to have with a place to stay versus like the hotel being the destination in and of itself, because that's a thing too. I don't know if you've seen, like, in Idaho, there's something called the Big Idaho Potato Hotel. It's like literally
no, but I need to know about
it's like
this.
a giant potato. I know about it because I used to work in the event industry, and they have these funky like customized vehicles, and somebody took one from a promotion that Idaho was doing for their potatoes, and they like planted it in Idaho and like turned it into a little hotel, and it's in the middle of nowhere. So like it comes with its own cow, I think. So anyway, it's like, so it's one of these places where like it almost doesn't matter where. I'm just using an example because it almost doesn't matter where it is. People just go just to have the experience of staying in this place. Or there's like these mirrored cabins in Norway and places like that, or a tree house where it's like, we're just going to drive like 1,000 miles just to stay at this tree house. You have that. And then you have like, hey, I want to experience this destination, but I also want to like have a place that kind of matches up with my personality and the vibe I want and everything like this. I have a funny story with how I like totally botched that on a trip I sent my wife on once, but I'll leave that for another time.
You sent her on it?
Yeah, I sent her on the trip and I botched it because I used hotel points and I booked her at the W thinking, well, this will be really nice for her. And she was preggers and they had a nightclub there and they were like blaring music all night. So it was like...
She's like, I'm not in this phase of my life right now.
This was the wrong chapter. I went to the wrong chapter of life. Anyway, so just overall advice from your experience.
So, I call it matchmaking, right? Hotel matchmaking is very important. And you take Paris as an example, or London, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of options. So if I am helping someone with a hotel, I'm not a travel advisor. I work with a lot of travel advisors at Embark Beyond, but I start by asking them questions, right? And I think that's really important. What kind of vibe do you want? Do you care about being out a little bit of the location? Do you want to be in a neighborhood? Do you want to be in the center of it all? It's like in New York, Times Square versus going down to Tribeca or the Village or across the bridge to Brooklyn. Like what kind of person are you, right? Is it your first trip to the city? Is it your fifth trip to the city? If it's your fifth trip to the city, I'm going to recommend that you go stay at the St. James, which is out, but it's like where people live. And it's just the most spectacular former chateau, so I started by asking these questions. Also, is food important to you, right? So for some people, actually food isn't important, which I don't know. That's not how I travel, but they don't really care or they don't really want to eat there at all. So actually, if you don't want to be at the hotel at all, then you should not probably stay at a more expensive hotel. Go stay at the Hotel du Danube, 250 euros a night, which I love, across from Cafe de Flore. Like, so I think it is this sense of matchmaking and doing your research. I don't know how you research, but I always look at the Telegraph. I always look at Rick Steves. I always look at not so much TripAdvisor reviews, but you can get a good sense of a hotel for that, or booking.com. And then I love travel advisors. Like, even if you are booking a hotel that isn't $1,500 a night, like, travel advisors do have great options where they can get you free breakfast and $100 spa credit. I just did this in Sedona over Christmas. I booked a hotel through an advisor, and I got all of the perks, which I didn't, it wasn't work. So yeah.
Where do you find an advisor nowadays?
I think Virtuoso is the best place to start. Like, it's the number one collection of advisors, I think, in the world. I'm editor-in-chief at a company called Embark Beyond, and we have, 250 advisors. You might not find the right advisor right away. Like, you might have to date a few, again, to bring up dating, to find your advisor, depending on what it is. But a really good travel advisor listens, asks questions, figures out what you need. Sometimes I plan trips to Switzerland for people because I know it so well. I do it kind of on the side. And that's what I start out by doing. I'm planning right now a trip for a family of 11 to Switzerland. And the number one thing for them, like, they want a pool, they have young kids.
Sounds
that's
familiar.
kind of what's important. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. We get it. But another family that I worked with before, like, it was 6 couples traveling together, and they didn't care so much about the pool. They wanted a vibe. And anyways, there's a lot of things you can think about. And also, if you get there and it sucks, you can always check out. Go to another hotel. If it's really that bad, or it's a good story.
Right.
So,
all right. Well, the list that I named, maybe you called it something else. I called it top 5 hotels in the world worth the price.
Worth the price.
Is that your criteria, or what are you calling this list that you brought for us today?
I'm calling it like 5 hotels that are really worth seeking out in your life.
Okay.
And actually, my first one is not as crazy expensive as you might think, but the other ones maybe are.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the first one that is on my list is a hotel called Schloss Elmau. And you fly into Munich. And so this is what I did. I flew into Munich, and then you drive there. It's about an hour, and it's sort of in the Bavarian Alps. So it's very soul stirring, this private alpine valley. And it was founded in 1906 by the current owner's grandfather. So the current owner is Dietmar Müller-Elmau. And it was envisioned as sort of a sanctuary for people to connect with nature and write and learn. And that's kind of what it is today. I think on average too, I mean, if you're looking at price, if you're going to go to Provence or the Amalfi Coast for thousands a night, this is expensive. It's probably the most expensive in Germany, but you can get really good rates depending on the time of year. So I can't remember when most of the property burned down except for the original concert hall, which survived. It's still there today. I think the fire was in 2005. It's now been rebuilt, and it's sort of divided into 2 hotels, the Hideaway and the Retreat. And this is actually where the G7 has been held twice. So they had to build it so they had equal presidential suites for everyone. And then the US president has his own special place. I can't remember what they call it. It's only for the US president. So it is this place where, there's 6 pools, and it's so kid friendly, and they divide the kids club by ages. So it's like, not only here's the kids club, but it's like 2 to 5, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 15. Like, they really go and drill into the age, which I love. And there's this huge cultural calendar throughout the year. So symposiums and dance things and music and all kinds of music. And it's just really, you can come and you can just be with your family and do nothing, or you can connect with other people who love these cultural things as much as you do. And it's just, I've never been to a place like this in my life.
Yeah. Do you think it would be good for the world if they put all the presidents in a dorm room at a hostel?
Yeah, I do actually. I think everything would be solved.
It's just like, here's your shared bathroom. Good luck.
Have fun. Pretend like you're 17 again. Remember?
I want to see that reality show.
Yeah, me too.
That sounds epic.
Me too. Yeah.
What a treat for you too, as a journalist, to be able to you have the physical structure of the building and the beauty that comes with that and the architecture and everything. But then you get to dig deeper and get the stories and kind of put it into context and really, really bring it to life with the background.
People.
Yeah. The people.
And that's Dietmar, who I've spent hours with him. Like he founded one of the hotel, can't remember now, one of the hotel finance tech tools. He sold it to Oracle. He did really well. But he was just, he wants to bring people together and be curious about the world. And it's just the coolest thing. It's not just a hotel. It's like a cultural retreat.
Yeah, and something about the hospitality industry when people are in it for the right reasons like that, you feel like you have this kinship in some ways because they are, you value those experiences as a traveler because you get to have them, and they value probably that as a traveler through their own experience, but also they value giving that to other travelers, which is a gift in and of itself. Like I love when people come in town and I can show them something cool and you see they're jazzed and they're getting that travel buzz and you're like, cool. It's like paying it forward as a traveler when you have a home base. You want to give a nice experience to people that come through.
Speaking of which, I love the Samaro house in Oslo.
Yeah. Never been.
Have you been?
No.
What? Oh,
no.
It's so cool. It opened a couple of years ago. It's pretty new, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well,
it's awesome.
I'll have to go down and crash the bar or whatever you do, I guess.
Exactly. The breakfast.
The breakfast, yeah. All right. You got another one for us?
Yeah. So my next one, so this is cheating a little bit, but Africa is a continent, right? There are a lot of countries. They're not all the same. But when I think about Africa, an African safari, I think that if I could gift everyone one trip in the world, it would be an African safari because you hear yourself think, almost for me, it was like the first time in my life because of the utter silence, because of the landscapes that look the exact same as they did 10,000 years ago. And there's two companies in Africa, so I'm putting it into one, which are really doing great work. And one is Singida, which has this 100-year conservation, 100-year purpose to preserve and protect wildlife for future generations. And Singida, Tanzania is in my book. And basically, Tanzania was not a place that you went 20 years ago for a safari. And Singida has played a huge role in partnership with the Grumeti Fund. So a portion of your stay goes into that to really rewild, protect, and turn this enormous swath of land into a place where people want to go again. And also Chem Chem Lodge is doing amazing things in Tanzania. So, and I think Singida actually, it means miracle in the language of, I think it's South African, the Shangan people, which I think is just, every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, miracle, really special. And it was founded by this guy named Luke Bales, and he basically took his original family farmstead from 1923, which is now Singida Castleton in South Africa, and started this brand, and it's expanding across the continent. They're opening in Botswana. But I think the point of it is Africa connects you to yourself like nowhere else. And the other brand I wanted to talk about was the Royal Portfolio, and it's kind of the opposite in style to Singida. So this was, again, two South Africans started it, Liz and Phil Biden, but it's really Liz Biden's designer perspective. It's just complete and utter brilliance, color. Like she'll put like pink and purple and green and blue together, and it somehow just works. And so basically they took their family homes in South Africa and they started just turning them into hotels. And so they also opened one in Cape Town called the Silo, which was not their home, but it's an incredible place in architecture. So it's for Royal Malawan, Birkenhead House, La Residence, and the Silo, 4 different places, all on this like 10-day tour that you can do. And you basically see the best of South Africa. And it's the best guides I've ever had. Andy Dill, this is what it is. And you know it. It is the people. AI can never replace that. AI can't host you, bring you around on a game drive. And I think at these properties, all of the Singida ones and all the Royal Portfolio ones, you see it through their eyes.
Yeah.
So
sounds epic.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Just on a personal note, you said Africa is the place that connects you to yourself more than any other place. Personally, have you had some kind of personal, meaningful experience there that has stayed with you? Yes. I think there was one actually moment. I was traveling with a small group of friends, and there was a lightning storm.
And I actually think of my life kind of in a before and an after to this lightning storm, because yeah, it was just like nothing I've ever seen. I was in it. It was like that movie Twister, like where you're like in the tornado, but this was just, it was spectacular. And I couldn't believe I was there. I couldn't believe that I was alive. I felt so lucky. And I started to make changes in my life after that moment where I was like, I don't want to do anything, honestly, that isn't fun anymore. Like, I think it was just started. And I also have built this career where I can say yes to things and say no to things, and just sort of accepting, or not, realizing that I can do that. And it really was Africa. It was that trip. It was the lightning storm. It was being connected to some of the tragic things that you see, like zebras suffering with broken legs and then being eaten by lions. And, yeah, I think there are so many moments on safari. And it's funny because before I started doing African safaris, people would talk about safaris and I'd be like, oh, here we go again. A safari, it's like $5,000 a night. Like, okay, great. And then you go and you're like, everyone needs to do this. And, just like I talked about the Singita purpose, but Royal Portfolio too. I mean, they have a huge foundation and they really are, when you go, you care. Like you might tell people, my mentor at National Geographic, Keith Bellows, who passed away, he said, let's frame sustainability as preserving the places we love. And I love that because he always said, we can't throw it in people's faces. Like you need to, they need to see it for themselves. And you can tell a story and show people, but when you get there, you're like, okay, I actually care about this and I'm going home changed forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. What a beautiful gift to have.
Beautiful gift. Beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
My next one, I'll be a little bit shorter here, is the Carlton in Cannes. It is now the flagship of Regent Hotels. So it's owned by IHG, which is like Six Senses in Kimpton, and the Intercontinental, which Carlton used to be, but it reopened a couple of years ago. And my favorite thing about the Carlton, it's in the French Riviera in Cannes, where the film festival is every May, is that it was where To Catch a Thief was filmed. And so if you want to travel today and go to a hotel, put this movie on. Grace Kelly, Cary Grant. It's the most spectacular travelogue for the French Riviera you'll ever see in your life, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. And it's just spectacular. And during filming, they stayed here. So Grace Kelly stayed here. And it's during that time where she met her future husband, Prince Rainier of Monaco. And the course of her life changed pretty dramatically. So, you can search for photos of Grace Kelly at the Carlton and you'll see the same wrought iron balconies that are there, and they're still there after the renovation. And then you walk in and it's all fresh and new, and it's where people meet, and you can sit there. I did this in December for a conference. I just sat there for 8 hours, just like people watching, and then walking outside. And it really changed Cannes itself as a city. Like people really want to go there now for a few days. And it was sort of a stopover before, unless you were going to the film festival. So I really, really love the Carlton. Yeah. It's really special.
Amazing. That's a whole subset of travelers too, the people that are going to see places where iconic scenes were shot from certain films. So that's
White Lotus travel is a big thing.
Sure. Yeah. So that's an interesting kind of twist to all this when you're hotel hunting, I guess.
Exactly. Okay. I can't remember what number I'm on, but Grand Hotel Tramezzo. So it's the hotel on the cover. The owner is one of my best friends in the world, Valentina DeSantis. I've known her for a long time now, but there's the cover. You can't believe it exists. It looks like a Wes Anderson movie. It
does.
Her family has owned it now for decades. She didn't grow up living there, but she grew up going there, spending time there. You see Bellagio across the lake. And it's not stuffy at all. Like, it's so fun. You walk in, there's jars of candy everywhere. Silvio Vettorella, who's the GM, greets you. There's these rooftop suites, like the Bellagio suite with a private jacuzzi that looks over to Bellagio. There's a pizza oven in the back. There's a pool that seems like suspended in the lake. And it's one of those places, Lake Como. It's funny. There's a lot of new hotels opening there too when you talk about over tourism. But Valentina has a sister hotel, Pasalacqua, that opened a couple years ago, which was voted number 1 in the world and World's 50 Best. And what she's doing is she is staying open longer on Lake Como, so people can come and experience it longer. You don't have to go in July, August, which I think is really cool. So Lake Como can feel crowded, but if you're at a hotel like this, you don't even want to leave. So
have you seen Clooney there? I mean, you always think about Clooney every time you think of Lake Como. I don't know why.
I know, he's like the Mark Twain of Lake Como. He's I have not seen him, but I know Valentina, well, she hasn't really told me. She's very discreet, but I think that she either knows him personally or has seen him a lot, but she hasn't told me. Okay. I think we're on the last one.
We are.
I don't know.
Epic list, by the way.
Epic list. I'm going to talk about one that has not been there for a very long time, but it is an example of a great hotel that takes you out of your ordinary life and is really just extraordinary because of the views. So this is the Oberoi Amar Villas in Agra, India, facing the Taj Mahal. And it's just every one of the 102 rooms has a view of the Taj Mahal. So you're waking up and you don't stay here very long. You might stay a night, maybe two, if you do like a big guided tour on one of the days. I like 2 nights. But it has these unobstructed views of the Taj Mahal. And there isn't a huge long history here. It opened in 2000, but there's no place like it in the world because it enhances your experience of seeing one of the world's great icons. I mean, imagine waking up and seeing it like from your bed. And the Taj Mahal itself, like, I think sometimes you get jaded, especially when you travel a lot. You're like, oh, I've seen the Eiffel Tower, like, you know, but the Taj Mahal goes beyond any expectation you have. Like nothing can prepare you for it. Like how intricate everything is. It's almost glowing. It's enormous. And it's been called the world's greatest monument to love. Because in the 1600s, the ruler of the Mughal Empire lost his favorite wife after she gave birth to their 13th child. And so he built it as a tomb for her. And he really loved her. So, and of course, there's a long list of famous people who have been here, like Prince William and Kate Middleton. But anyways, it's a portal hotel out of your normal life. Like one thing I never say about a hotel is that I want it to feel like home because I want it to feel better than my home. Like I don't want to do dishes or laundry. Like I want it to be better.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not your home.
Right.
The Oberoi at the Taj Mahal.
Awesome list. Thank you for putting that together. Sort of a best of the best. It's cool to hear your choice cuts, let's call them.
Yes.
From the book, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the World's Ultimate Retreats. Of course, we'll link up to it in the show notes. I wish that I could somehow be sent to all these places you just mentioned and we could like weave the audio into this episode. Do you think they have a budget for that?
Let's try. I mean, you never know.
Along the lines of, well, let's talk about, all right, you can use hotel points and things like that. And I know we talked about the luxury hotel thing. Do you have any tips for whether it's a hotel in the book or any other, let's use air quotes, like more expensive type hotels, luxury hotels, for getting better hotel rates, let's say? And maybe these kind of properties, they don't need to discount because that's, you know, that's just the demands there. And it's a different type of style of travel, different type of clientele. But I'm just curious if you had I mean, it would be terrible if I let you go without trying to get some of your top tips.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I do think number one is a travel advisor. Number two, I think some of these hotel companies like Leading Hotels of the World, Preferred, SLH, Small Luxury Hotels of the World, they have membership programs. So if you are interested in this type of hotel, like Preferred has different levels of hotels. They have their top collection, which is like the most luxurious, and then it sort of goes down in tiers. And then Leading, which is actually an amazing organization because it's mostly, or almost all, or maybe all family run. I think it's mostly all family run hotels that are super luxe. So you can join these, you know, as members, and then you do get perks and different things, different specials, because listen, these hotels are expensive, but they are not full the whole year. Right? There's always an off season. There's always like not during the school holidays, midweek. They need to fill those rooms. So they do send out specials and things that you can access if you're a member, if you're on the newsletter. And I sign up for every newsletter.
Yeah. So you could just sign up, get the free membership, and then just see what comes your way, and perhaps it works out. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned, you know, you can get dressed up, put on your fanciest travel cutoff, zip off short pants or whatever you have with you and go to the bar wherever you're going.
Yeah.
But, you know, as far as some of the other hotels in the book, are there any other kind of just different, I don't want to say like weirder hotel experiences, but other things that you can do outside of just going to the bar, having breakfast that you notice are like, wow, this is pretty unique. I know you don't like to use that word, but.
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot, I think, but there's one that it comes to mind. It has a cool story. It's called the Ambassade in Amsterdam, and the owner is a book publisher. And so the hotel has 5,000 signed books from authors who have stayed there, like lining the library bar. So again, it is a bar thing, but it's a cooler story. I think 62 Nord, actually in Norway. Do you know these hotels?
I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's kind of a collection. It's Storfjord Lodge, it's the Hotel Brosunde and Alesund, which is where I flew into. And then the Hotel Union Oi, which is in this little village that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the hotel. And I think seeing Norway through these hotels' eyes is really unique because you're driving through the fjords, but then going to communities that have basically been saved by the hotels. I mean, there's nothing like a treehouse hotel or an igloo, or this is for volume 2, Jason, where I'm going to go for the 100 craziest hotels in the world.
There you go. I mean, what do you think the future of hotels are, given the rise of the sharing economy? And, it's, of course, it's always going to have its place. It's a different kind of experience.
It's a great question. I think the hotel industry after COVID, they overpriced everything. So I think now it's in a trend where we're looking at like the word of the year at Embark, where I have, where I work as editor in chief, like is value. Like you can pay $1,500 a night, but you want to know what you're getting for it. But I think with the sharing economy piece of it, it's funny having kids. Like I just want an apartment sometimes, right? Like I want a kitchen. I don't want the fancy breakfast. I want to cook her pasta at 5:30 p.m. And she's growing out of that a little bit. So I think we're going to see more regulation around that, like what, Florence has proposed, Lucerne, Switzerland, where my husband is from. Like you can only rent out your apartments now for 3 months of the year, because it's not as good for the community to have everywhere be an apartment rental. But I think hotels, to me, the trend should be that they do have more of these options that are little apartments. So I've been talking to some hotel owners about that and how that could maybe scale for people. Because I don't know if you've done this too, but you're like eating dinner in the bathroom while your kid is sleeping in the dark room, which is like, being a parent. But yeah, I think there's a lot of hotel trends, but I think for now we have to sort of normalize again after COVID and let people know it's a great industry to work in. It's exhausting, but a lot of people left after COVID. But there's, people are getting paid more now. I think that's going to be the next shift in the next 10 years, because imagine a lot of these jobs that will be taken over by AI, which I just did this training. I'm like, I'm a dinosaur, but I learned AI and I think it's unbelievably amazing, but a lot of jobs will be taken away, and hospitality like that, you cannot replace, people, person to person contact.
Yeah. Where is AI useful in travel, do you think?
I think for an overall itinerary planning. So if you're like, tell me you are an award-winning travel editor working for Condé Nast is one of the prompts I gave it. Like, can you book me or show me a 10-day itinerary to Japan that hits on all the highlights and lesser known places? And within 1 minute, I got spit out this itinerary that's honestly amazing. But you then need, in my view, an expert who has been to Japan to go through that and say, okay, now you want to eat here, you want to do this, and kind of put the pieces together. So I think for travel agents, it'll be amazing in a way. It'll take away some of that annoying work that they have to do. But I think, again, no one can really, like, can you tell me one of your favorite restaurants in Oslo?
Tranchero is one of my favorite restaurants. It's just, they're one of these restaurants that makes one thing great.
Which is?
A steak.
Oh, a steak. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it just makes like you can't get all different kinds of steak. You get this one ribeye steak, and they just really do it exactly perfect every time. I love that. So
I'm going to write that down, and now I'm going to put it on my Oslo map. I'm going to write Jason Moore told me about this. The next time I'm in Oslo, I know to go there, and that you cannot get that from AI. Like you just can't, right? And I think that's something that, especially because now I know that you told me that. Right. Versus the chat bot telling me the best places to go. And a lot of the restaurant stuff to me is like so wrong and off. Like for London, I'm like, tell me the top 10 best restaurants in London. Some people don't want to go to that. They want to go to the neighborhood place. They want to go to the pizza place. They want to go one night to the Michelin place. But what's the difference? Yeah. And that's expertise. So, yeah.
Yeah. So in that example, I guess just perhaps utilizing it for overarching itinerary ideas, but then you need the human touch to dig in deeper and really curate and craft something worth
exactly.
worth exploring, I guess.
I think the other thing that I did with it was I've been trying to figure out a new contract for a client of mine, and I didn't know how to put it all together, like what it was in my head to make it sound professional. And I just kind of spit out, like vomited all these things, like this is what I do, this is da-da-da-da, but I'm not in a box, and and it just spit out the most perfect job description I've ever read in my life. I'm like, I've been working on this for 6 months trying to figure out what my value was here. Like, how did it do this? It was incredible. So, yeah.
It's scary because it's scary to me. I should say some people, it's not that I'm not a technophobe. It's just that like, this is just the beginning. If it can do this now.
It's just the beginning. I mean, the scary thing was like that New York Times article that was like, I fell in love with AI, like the chat bot, like the writer like fell in love with the person. And after doing my training on Friday, I was like, I can actually see that.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Yeah, when I saw the movie Her, have you seen that? It's the same concept.
Yes,
because when I got it, I'm like, this is going to be stupid. Nobody can fall in love. Yeah. This is totally fiction. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I can see how that could happen in a...
I know.
Yeah.
I think overall, I guess the lesson or the takeaway from this podcast is just go to the pub. Talk to real people, right?
There you go. A professional wrapping it up. No, I do. Come on. I got a couple more quick hit questions. I have to because
we're not done. I'm just saying.
Well, you've been doing this for a long time, and I wanted to get your advice on interviewing because you have interviewed many people. You're a journalist. You've been working in travel 20 plus years. I mean, I interviewed Samantha Brown some months ago. You interviewed her a while ago, and then you guys became really good friends. And I'm like, obviously, you had a great connection. She wrote the foreword in your book, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, I'm just wondering, like, to connect with people on that level, what's your best advice for me for interviewing or for anybody listening that wants to just engage in conversation and get people to open up? That works great for travelers, when you want to connect with locals.
Yes. First of all, you're a really good interviewer, so you don't really need any tips.
I wasn't fishing for any compliments.
I will say, Sam, for example, so Sam and I, and actually her husband came to my wedding, and is goes to our family weddings now, which is so funny. She and Kevin came to my brother's wedding in New York. I think really it's about being curious. And there's so many people who don't ask a single question. Like I'll still meet people and for the first time and I'm sitting there like, okay, I've asked 15 questions and you're looking at them. Like, do you want to ask me anything? Like anything at all? Like, what is my name? Like, where do I live? So curiosity, I think, also going into it, I mean, if you're actually really interviewing someone, you can use AI now, which I just discovered 2 days ago to come up with a list of questions. But really, like, what story do you want to tell? Like, if I'm interviewing someone for a story, what story do you want to tell? What story is the real story, right? Like, it might be the story I want to tell is that this is the, growing hotel brand coming out of Italy. But is that the truth? I think travel journalism is different from real journalism in the sense that I don't want to, some people disagree with this. I don't want to throw people under the bus. And if it's a bad experience, I don't really talk about it. Like there's a lot of hotels that I went to that didn't make the book. But I think having leading questions that get that out of people. Like, and for me, I mean, I have so many questions for you. It's so funny. It's so weird being interviewed because I want to know, like, really, how did you end up in Oslo and why? And do you like it? And like those sorts of things. So we're going to have coffee in Oslo one day and talk about it, but
count me in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just being actually really curious. And I think people are not sometimes.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
What was the most controversial piece you ever published, either as an editor or as a writer?
Oof, God, that's a great question. And there was a story that I wrote for National Geographic because I worked as urban insider for about 6 years and with them for about 9. I was like the first.
Was that the job that you totally created from scratch, basically, which is also epic? I wanted to talk about some career advice, which is great. Yeah. I mean, you could share a little bit on that story.
Yeah.
I mean, you essentially created an entire division within.
I did.
Geo,
yeah.
right?
So there was the digital nomad, Andrew Evans, who's an amazing, amazing writer, but there was no female voice sort of going around the world. And what I did was it took about a year, but I ended up pitching Keith Bellows, the mentor, who was the editor-in-chief at Traveler, and then Kim Conahan, who was the publisher, on this idea, because it had to be financially supported by partnerships and then have the editorial piece as well. And so I basically said I'm like, listen, I am not the influencer. This was almost, I don't know, 13 years ago now. I'm not the influencer who's in a bikini on the beach. Like I am in the city. I'm obsessive. I bring my maps everywhere. I show them like kind of the research I've done. And I pitch them. I'm like, what about this sort of female voice going to cities around the world alone and sort of telling those stories? And it took a while, but we did end up doing it. And I got a little cartoon sunglasses on and became the urban insider for Nat Geo. And I think now National Geographic is owned by Disney. So a lot has changed. That was in the old days, you know, before Disney, before Fox owned them, when it was just the National Geographic Society. So yeah, it was the dream job. It was like my, you know, late 20s or mid 20s to early 30s, going around the world. So I think see an opening is like my number one career tip. And like I said, never think it's out of your league, make it your league, and create a job that doesn't exist. It is possible, but you can't also like, you might have to work for free for a while and do, like Mel Robbins calls it, doing the reps. Like you have to do the reps before you get somewhere. And I think people always say, oh, I love people and I love travel and I love food. I'm like, great. So does everyone. Like if that was why I was in this job, I would have been out a long time ago. But yeah, you definitely can create the job you want, especially now with social media and the platforms that exist.
Yeah. By the way, I really appreciated the fact that on your website, you have an entire section dedicated to career advice, which is really cool. We'll link up to that because I know you get that question a lot. And just the fact that you put it out there in that way, I think is a testament to your spirit and who you are in terms of like willingness to help. And
No, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I really, I care so much about whenever I meet, I love 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I love them. Like, I feel like I worked with 12-year-old girls for a long time when I was in my early 20s through this program. And I love them, how they see the world. And then they get like bogged down by like, you know, spreadsheets and KPIs and the structure of different companies. And I'm like, don't give up on what you want to do.
This is something to steal from this episode too. When you said, if it's nothing's out of your league, make your own league. I think you said,
yes, make it your league. Never think it's out of your league.
That's awesome. I think that's a great takeaway. Just a couple other quick things. This is my way around kind of, I think it's a bit lazy to ask, what's your favorite destinations? And that can change on a daily basis anyway. But a different way in is perhaps 3 places you've been that you were willing to go back to, which to me is like the ultimate compliment for a traveler. That like, let's say you could only go back to, you only have 3 more trips you can take and you have to go back to somewhere you've been. At this stage in your life right now, where would you go?
So I'm, again, one of those weird ones that I have all these homes, meaning I don't have homes, actual homes, but I have like Switzerland feels like home, London feels like home, Scottsdale, Arizona feels like home, and New York City feels like home. So all of those places are places that I feel like I have to go back to. But if I didn't include those, so we haven't talked at all about South America, but I love Argentina. I love Peru. I love Ecuador. I love Brazil. I mean, you were mentioning a Brazilian hostel. I love South America. I feel like it's a third of the cost of Europe, and it's just all about life rather than like the icons, like checking off the Colosseum or the Eiffel Tower. It's about really, they have those things too, but really about living and life. And I love that. I always love going back to Germany, which might seem like a random one, but Berlin is like my favorite city in the world. I love German cooking, German baking. And I want to go back there, and I want to go back to Hong Kong. I haven't been there in a while, but it's a place that I could always go back to. And it kind of makes me sad, sort of the political turmoil around it. And I love it so much.
A life-changing book, 1 or 2 that you've read that's impacted you in some way? Any recommendations?
The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho.
Alchemist, yeah.
My ex actually had Paulo Coelho sign one for me, which was like the best gift he ever could have gotten. It just talks about going after your dream. And sort of it's the most amazing book. Also, The Art of Racing in the Rain, told through a dog's eyes about his owner. And then the famous quote from that one, which I love, is that which we manifest is before you. there's a theme here that you can do what you want in your life. Yeah, there's so many. I read all the time. I'm reading All Fours right now, which is one of the, big books of last year.
Amazing. Thanks for a lovely chat. I hope we do get to do this in person over coffee again. And yeah, we'll mention the book one more time, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the World's Ultimate Retreats. And of course, we'll link up to all that. Last bit of anything you want to share here. Any other quotes or words? I think you pretty much nailed it with a lot of great takeaways, I feel. Plus, we got all the hotel advice and the destination stuff. I'm kind of riding on a high right now. I don't know about you listening, but it's really awesome to connect with you. And last, if you have anything to share to anybody out there.
I mean, not to reiterate a point that we've already talked about, but I grew up one of 5 kids. We didn't have a lot of money. I slept in bathtubs, and I just was obsessed with hotels. That, whatever your obsession is, you can make it a part of your life that is really fun, whether or not it's your job, but you can make it happen. And I feel so lucky. I said my last year was the best year of my life. It's just, I don't know, all the hard work does pay off. So,
and you can check in and still run in and just jump on the bed. Isn't that still,
you can jump on the bed.
Isn't that still a great thing? Do you still sometimes just check in and just jump on the bed?
I absolutely do. I really do. I take my shoes off and then I do. Yeah. Because I'm pretty clean. So,
Thank you so much, Annie. And
thank you. It was great to talk to you.
Congrats on the book. Likewise. And we'll chat soon.
Perfect. Bye. Have a good day.
Take care. There you have it once again. Thank you to Annie Fitzsimmons for stopping by the show. Her new book by National Geographic, I'll mention one more time, 100 Hotels of a Lifetime, the World's Ultimate Retreats. I'm holding it in my hands right now. Talk about some bucket list destination fodder. No shortage of that in this book. Okay. Speaking of being obsessed, as Annie talked about at the end, I love that when she said, you should make your obsessions a big part of your life. I've certainly done that with travel in this podcast, and I am also obsessed with road trips, which is why it's been so incredibly fun to put together this series for you of the top 5 road trips in the USA. We're headed to the East Coast today. Buckle up and come along for the ride. Yes, it is time for another fantastically fun edition of our special mini-series, the 5 best road trips in the USA, where each week you discover a new unforgettable trip in a region of the US, a breakdown of why it's worth doing, and a suggested itinerary with a sampling of the variety of things you can see, do, and eat along the way. This week, epic East Coast mix. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of cities, but you're also going to get some of the college town flavors, a small town charm, easy outdoor adventures, iconic stadiums. I can go on and on. First, before we dive in, a question. What makes every trip you take unique and unlike anyone else's, even though you may be visiting the same place? It's your willingness to dive into a destination and explore it your way. That creates your on-the-ground experience, your willingness to travel, to get out of your comfort zone and embrace all of the uncertainties that come with that serves as an excellent reminder to yourself that you're capable of great things and able to embrace the impossible. You are an icon of adventure. So I do want to say a massive thank you to another icon of adventure, Defender, for supporting this special mini-series. Defender is truly the ultimate road trip vehicle for many reasons, including its legendary durability, both off-road and on, its cargo capacity, and the fact that it's tested to the extreme. Defender's family of vehicles includes the 90, 110, or the 130, which has 8 seats with a tough, rigid body design. It's been reimagined for a new generation of explorers. That is you. Design your Defender at LandRoverUSA.com. All right, let's get into this epic East Coast mix, this Northeast loop, I'm calling it. We're going to be sitting in the car for roughly 28 hours total, not all at once. 1,581 miles of pure, unadulterated fun, a lifetime of memories coming your way if you take this trip. And here it is. We're going from New York City to Boston to Bar Harbor, Maine, with a potential pit stop or two along the way. I'll throw those in. Burlington, Philadelphia, and finally Washington, D.C. before heading back up north to New York City. Now, there's way too much to cover. This is such an epic trip. I keep using that word epic, but it truly is. Having grown up on the East Coast, there's so much to see and do, so much packed in there. And I was curious, so I went to census.gov to see, how much of the population is actually in the Northeast related to the rest of the country. It turns out a little over 57 million people, which is 17.2% of the population based in the Northeast area of the United States. It's pretty packed together. I mean, if you look at it on the West Coast, they have 78 million, 23.7% of the population. I think about how much more spread out that is. So you get quite a lot of people, but with that, of course, quite a lot to see and do. And you're never too far from something incredible hidden around the corner. Now, I'm just going to pull out one thing from each of these stops to wet your whistle, to give you a little quick hit, a taste of the sheer variety of things to experience and that you can experience on this trip. But I will go deeper on one city, my hometown area of Philadelphia, home of the two-time Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, had to throw that in. Okay. Let me start in New York City. And why here? Well, it's New York City. I mean, it's one of the greatest cities in the world. Why not? And on top of that, it's also an easy place to find a flight if you're coming from somewhere else. And, again, curiosity got the best of me. I had to jump on the Port Authority for New York and New Jersey website to get some of the data and statistics on flights coming in and out of the New York area. I was just curious, how many flights are actually coming in this area? Well, I went to the region summary tab on 12 months rolling, so the last 12 months as the date of this recording, and this is insane. 1,259,319 flights in the region coming in and out. That includes domestic and international, total of over 145 million passengers. Insane! So, anyway, all that being said, you can find your way to New York, and there's too much to do. I mean, it's endless. My number one recommendation for New York City, and this is one of my absolute favorite things to do anywhere travel-wise. Really, I had the pleasure of growing up outside of Philadelphia and having had friends from college, moved to New York City. I never lived in New York City, but I had a lot of friends living there, so I got to spend time visiting there growing up, and I also got to spend a lot of time there for work when I was doing all the touring stuff, but also just visiting friends and just staying in their apartments and being in the city and exploring. And my absolute favorite thing to do, whether you're in Dumbo, Brooklyn, or Williamsburg, or Astoria, Queens, or Midtown Manhattan, or whatever, is just to get out and walk and see what you come across. Literally just let your feet take you. You cannot go wrong. And you can plan visits to see the High Line, which is a really cool thing to see, or the Metropolitan Museum of Art, for example. I mean, there are going to be things you want to schedule in, but if there's any place in the world where you want to just show up without an agenda and let the city take you, in my opinion, that's New York City. Such an incredible experience. And I'll never forget being about 9 or 10 years old. I think I was 9, and going to New York the first time, at least the first time I could remember. It was just a powerhouse. I mean, the impression it had on me, all the people and the madness. I ended up buying a Sony SK1 keyboard from one of the electronics stores, and with using my allowance that I'd saved up for who knows how long. It just had such a huge impression on me, the city. I'll never forget being on the streets and just realizing for the first time, wow, the world is way bigger than I thought it was. Insane. And I feel like you can still have that sense of wonder when you show up in New York. There's a pulse, there's a rhythm. You get out in the streets, you're just it's undeniable. You're in New York City. Let's go. Here we go. Take a long walk. All right. Next up, making our way to Boston. Now, the Freedom Trail, this is according to freedom.org. I'll read their summary just because they summarize it the best. That's what they do. The Freedom Trail is a unique collection of museums, churches, meeting houses, burying grounds, parks, a ship, and historic markers that tell the story of the American Revolution and beyond. And I've walked along this Freedom Trail. And it's a great experience. And I think I quite enjoyed it just because of the walk. You're getting the history. And also, it's a great way to start a visit. Like on your first day there, you could just go to the trail and go through the walk and read some of the stuff. But then you can wander off the trail and do different things. And when I say trail, you're not thinking woods. It's in the city. But you get all of those things that I mentioned from freedomtrail.org as a part of that. And it's a cool experience and a great way to kind of start a trip in Boston. But if you only do one thing that you're going to plan out, if you want to do something ultra-American, you take in a baseball game at Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox. It's the oldest ballpark in the USA, built in 1912. You got to get tickets in advance, surely. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing a game at Fenway, but I have been to Wrigley Field in Chicago, which is the second oldest ballpark. And I can tell you there's so much charm and so much spirit just oozing out of the walls in these ballparks. Even if you're not like a sports or baseball fan, it's just such a wonderful experience. So slate that in. Okay, on to Bar Harbor, Maine. If you choose so, you can pit stop in Portland, Maine. It's not too far away. And perhaps you want to go lobster fishing so you can learn that trade and catch your dinner. Or if the timing's right, you could hit the Portland Art Walk on a first Friday. But we're going to head to Bar Harbor. If you have a Defender 130, by the way, you've got 8 seats. So then you can invite a boatload of your friends along for this coastal beauty. Sorry, I couldn't resist the boatload reference because, Bar Harbor is on this picturesque coastal area, and it's the gateway to Acadia National Park. 2 places I've never been, Bar Harbor and Acadia, that I'm dying to visit. My dad's been a bunch and raves about it, and that's why I wanted to include here. I've had Acadia on my list for so long, and if you're there and what I want to do, although it's a pretty popular thing to do, why not? You hit the ocean path in Acadia National Park. Perhaps some of you listening have done it. This is a classic hike on nps.gov. They give you a taste of the vibe, saying that you can, quote, explore vast slabs of pink granite, picturesque cliffs, and breathtaking ocean views as the ocean path takes you along the bold coast of Maine, end quote. Come on. Does that not sound great? It's about a little under 4.5 miles round trip. I can just taste it with the coffee in hand, morning, the saltwater smell coming off the coast. Oh, I'm just, taking myself there right now. Sorry. Sounds like just what the doctor ordered, as far as I'm concerned. All right. Now on to Burlington, Vermont. One of my favorite places to visit, really. Shout out to my buddy Ethan who lives there. It's just a great small-ish college town. Vermont's got its own vibe. Before I get into Vermont a little bit, a quick trivia question. In what city did Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, a.k.a. Ben and Jerry, originally planned to start their business? Hint, it wasn't in Vermont. You're going to hear the answer in a minute. But I'm bringing this up because touring the Ben & Jerry's factory and creating your own flavor is something you can do while you're in Vermont. And you can also explore the incredible fall foliage in the surrounding area if you find yourself there during that time of year. Vermont in the fall is just spectacular, mind-blowing. Insert whatever adjective you want here. It won't fall short. And you can also just take a nice leisurely stroll down pedestrian-only Church Street Marketplace, designed by Bill Trow, a citizen architect. I love that term. He is no longer with us, but in his obituary I read, they said, quote, Bill was dedicated to improving communities through architecture, end quote. I love that. What an intention. That's like the definition of a perfect one-sentence intention. Built around your career or your craft, you would say in this case. Improving communities through architecture. We should be doing more of that around the world. Okay. Moving on. We're taking a travel day to head to my hometown of Philadelphia. Now, too many people, in my humble opinion, shuttle from New York City to D.C. or maybe up to Boston, totally skipping over Philly. How dare they? How dare they skip over the home of the 2-time Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles? Sorry, I had to do it again. Philadelphia, by the way. The city Ben & Jerry wanted to start their business in until they discovered the startup costs would be too high, which is why they ended up in Vermont, at least according to the internet. Okay, now I've been living abroad for too long. I asked my sister, who's lived in the Philly area her entire life, minus some travel here and there. I asked her to share her recommendations because she's more hip to what's going on there now than I am. And I just think, you know what? We got to serve the audience properly if they're going to be listening to this podcast. Maybe you're driving through Philadelphia right now and you weren't going to stop and you're like, hold on, Jason's telling me to pull over. I trust my sister with these recommendations, and she was the cool one. She was the one that knew all the cool bands before everybody else did and that sort of thing. So anyway, trust your taste. Here we go. Elfreth's Alley, near Independence Hall and Liberty Bell. Of course, if you're going to want to take in some of the history, you can take in Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell, which I encourage you to do so. But Elfreth's Alley, it's a great place to take photos, and you get to see the quintessential Philadelphia architecture right there. Okay. She tells you also to check out Cherry Street Pier. There's a bunch of artists in residence and studios. It's a cool space to walk around. And you can also check out the Delaware River waterfront. That I'm going to go to the next time I'm in Philly. Franklin Fountain. She also says this place is cool, totally historic, right down to what they wear. It's also in the Old City, which has souvenir shops and other galleries and shops. Reading Terminal Market, which I've been to. She says, too much debating around the cheesesteaks, but everyone seems to agree Dinnick's for roast pork sandwich is phenomenal. So there you go. We're going to avoid the cheesesteak dilemma there. Plus, she says the market's full of amazing food, has something for everybody, and a fun place to explore. And then finally, the punk rock flea market. It isn't going on all the time, but it's a great event if the timing is right. And that's phillyprfm.com for that one. So don't forget also one last thing, if you want to do the classic tourist move, which I do even as a tourist in my hometown. If you're near there, you got to run up the art museum steps and do your best Rocky impression. Fist raised triumphantly towards the sky. You got to do that. Okay. Last stop, Washington, D.C. This is a place I took my wife pretty early on because it's just a great place to visit. I mean, you get to see our nation's capital. There's no other place like Washington, D.C. with all of the monuments and the museums and it's singular. It's not even a state, so it's kind of a unique thing. And you can hit up any number of free world-class museums. I mean, for example, you have the Smithsonian museums and galleries on the National Mall alone. There are 11. I'll name a few. National Air and Space Museum, National Museum of Natural History, National Museum of American History, National Museum of the American Indian, on and on. Of course, it doesn't include the major monuments like Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, and so on. There are plenty to do. So I know it's time to drive back to NYC. I mean, your trip's complete here, but did we even scratch the surface? I mean, we scratched the molecular surface. So much to see and do on this route. So I hope that you enjoyed this epic East Coast mix, what I'm calling it, this road trip. It was a fun one to put together. And I want to thank our friends at Defender who love a great road trip. They are supporting the special 5 Best Road Trips in the USA mini-series geared to helping you discover your next great adventure. Check out the ultimate road trip vehicle, the Defender. Defender's family of vehicles includes the 90, 110, or 130. This icon of adventure with a tough, rigid body design has been reimagined for a new generation of explorers that is you. Design your Defender at LandRoverUSA.com. Where are we headed next week? You got to tune in to find out. There you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please get in touch anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Jason at zerototravel.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter. It's free, zerototravel.com/newsletter. I'm going to leave you with a quote that I think matches Annie's mentality that anything is possible. I love that about her attitude and her spirit and her work. And here's this quote to leave you with from Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." I think about the 4-minute mile and some of the other things that humans have been able to achieve that people have said is impossible until it's done and the floodgates are open. So I'll leave you with that one. We all have our own personal things that we may not even want to admit to ourselves that we think is impossible in some ways. But it always seems impossible until it's done, as Nelson Mandela said. So So I'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.